Hey everybody, welcome to my video introducing the Ansco Memar, also called the Agfa Silette. They're the same camera under different badges. This is a fixed lens viewfinder camera. It has no meter on it. The shutter goes from 1/125th to 1/200th with stops at a 50th and 1/100th in between. And because it has a leaf shutter, the flash on it syncs at any speed. This camera's target audience would have been entry-level users. It's a very, very basic camera. It has bulb mode as well, but it has a very limited shutter range. It's very lightweight. It's not poorly built, but it is made of components which could be assembled quickly. And also, I will tell you, having read the manual for this camera, it is clearly written for people who have never picked up a camera before. It is very, very remedial. The camera's viewfinder includes no parallax correction, so the closer that you are to the camera, the greater the risk that there will be some sort of parallax error. I'll explain that in a minute. And there were two models of the little Memar here. There is the chrome version, which is this one, and there's a painted version. And apparently the chrome was of higher quality, though I haven't ever seen a painted version, so I don't know what the differences are between them. This was produced by Agfa, which was at that time a subsidiary of General Aniline and Film called GAF. You may have seen GAF logos on things like film developing tanks and other accessories. That's the same company. This was produced from 1953 to 1960. One of the sources I read said it was produced only for 1 year, from 55 to 56. But I'm inclined to believe the 7-year production span on this. It was produced in Germany, where Agfa was located. So the little Ansco Memar was preceded by nothing whatsoever. This was the first 35mm compact viewfinder camera released by Ansco. It was concurrent with the Agfa Silette, obviously they are the same camera. And it was also concurrent with the Ansco Caromat, the SpeedX Special, and the Ansco Super Regent. Those were the other Ansco cameras being sold at the same time. And it was followed by the Super Memar or the Lancer. I'm not sure which one it was. So if you have your little Memar or your Agfa Silette with you, let's take a look at some of the features. I'll explain what they are, and then we'll look at how to do some things with this camera. So here we are on the top of the camera, and the first thing we have over here is the ISO window, and that simply tells you what speed of film you have. It doesn't actually control anything in the camera, and it's a bit funky to change the ISO. You have to lift up the knob and then rotate the dial from underneath. So we've got color daylight, color tungsten, 25 ISO black and white, 50, 100, 160, and up to 200 ISO, and that is the range that this camera can display in the ISO reminder window. And here we have the film rewind knob, this part right here. This is the accessory shoe. It's not a flash hot shoe. It will not power a flash. All it will do is hold an accessory, such as a flash, which is attached by a cable or a rangefinder or something like that. This is the shutter release button. Here's the film advance lever, right here. And this is what you use to advance the film. This is the frame count dial, and all that you have to do to, it automatically advances, but at the end of the roll you have to manually reset the frame count dial. On the front of the camera we have the viewfinder window up here, and that's what you would look through when you're looking through the viewfinder to compose your image. We also have the lens here on the front, and the shutter, which is built into the lens. It's there's this red lever right here is your self timer. This is how you focus the lens with the front element. This dial here selects your shutter speed. And there are some markings on there we'll talk about in a minute that help you with your focus. And this second dial right here selects your aperture, and you can see the aperture markings on top of the camera. And you can select from each of the different settings in full stops. On the side of the camera, we have the film back release right here. When we go to the back of the camera, we have, well, nothing except the viewfinder window. On the camera's bottom, we have the Made by Agfa stamp, as well as the tripod bushing and the film release button right there. Inside the camera, we have the film cassette chamber here, which is where you put your fresh roll of film in order to go and take a photo with it. Here are the guide rails. These raised rails on the outside keep the film from traveling up and down as it goes through the film plane. The silver rails here work with the film pressure plate to keep the film flat on plane. These sprockets are the film tension sprockets, which keep the film from being pulled back into the cassette and causing overlapping frames. And they also help guide the film so that it is properly taken up by the film take-up spool, which rotates when you turn the film advance lever. On the film back, we have the film pressure plate right here, which works to keep the film flat on plane, and a couple of little guides that help keep the film cassette aligned properly to send the film through the camera. I'll tell you what, while we have the film back open, let's load some film and see what happens as we take pictures. So to load the film, you pop the rewind knob up and simply drop the film in. Next, pull the rewind knob down and give yourself a short little leader. Going to hit the shutter really quickly, start advancing the film until I can get the leader into the take-up spool. Here we go. Oh, and one thing I forgot to mention on the inside, the serial number is here on the inside of your camera. So in real life, once you've loaded the film like this, then you would close the film back and advance the film. So what happens is, if you open up the back before or after the film has been exposed like this, it ruins the film. So you definitely don't want to do that. Film is one and done. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave the film back open so you can see what happens as you take pictures. So when you take a picture, you just push the shutter release right like that, and then advance the film. And you can see that each time you do it, it advances the film to the next frame. And the film advance mechanism here cocks the shutter so it can take another shot. Now, again, bearing in mind that this whole time your film back has to be closed. When you've finished your roll of film, you rewind it by pushing in and holding in this button and rewinding the film rewind knob. Because with this thing, you've really got to hold it down. You cannot let go of the film rewind knob. Otherwise, the film springs inside of the cassette, and then you're just rewinding the knob and rewinding without anything happening. It's a bit of a pain. So let's go through the process here of how to take a photo. The most basic principle of taking a photo is that all you have to do is push the shutter release. You hear the click, that's the shutter activating, and then advance the film. So once you've advanced the film, you set the ISO dial to remind you of what it is, because you'll need that to calculate the shutter speed. And then you reset the frame counter, which only goes in the counter or anti-clockwise direction. And as you're about to close the film back, you set it to A, and then you advance the film like I just showed you. Now, once you are at, let's say, frame 1 and you're ready to start shooting, you would take a light meter reading, and there are light meters that you can get that clip into the accessory shoe, or you just hand hold it, or you just estimate using the Sunny 16 rule. You select your lens's aperture and the shutter speed right here. Do any focusing that you think you need to do, and then you take the picture. The Sunny 16 rule says that if you're using, let's say, ISO 50 film, and you set the aperture to 16, then you want to use a 50th of a second shutter speed if your subject is in full sun. Basically, your ISO determines your shutter speed in full sun at f16. Now, that's a pretty good rule, and there are compensation tables you can find, and they're built into some cameras, but not this one, for things like shade and sun, cloudy days, and indoors, and so forth. Okay, so you can also do what's called zone focusing, and zone focusing starts by setting your aperture to f11, and f11 is next to a red dot, and that is your zone focusing aperture. Now there are two red numbers on your focusing ring that correspond with that red dot. They are 30 feet and 10 feet. 10 feet for your close zone and 30 feet for your far zone. And what that means is that when you're at f11 and focused at 10 feet, everything from 7 to 15 feet will be in focus. So if you want to take a picture of your kid who has just gotten an award or something like that, and you're about 10 feet away from them, 12 feet, 9 feet, whatever the distance is in that range, the quickest and easiest thing to do is set it at f11 and 10 feet, determine your shutter speed, and take the picture. When you focus it at 30 feet, everything from 15 feet to infinity is in focus. So this is the setting that you want to use if you want to get a picture of your significant other on vacation, and he or she is standing in front of a statue, and you want to get a picture of them and that statue, and you've got to stand 25 feet away from them. So at the 30-foot zone, everything from 15 feet is in focus. Now this is different from hyperfocal range, and hyperfocal extends the range even further. For hyperfocal shooting, what you want to do is look at the numbers which are right next to the focusing dial. So from the diamond, that going outward in an even amount are 3.5, 4, 5.6, 8, 11, and 16, and those correspond with the aperture numbers on top of the lens. And so the way that this works is, if you focus so that infinity is over here at f16, and you set your lens to f16, then everything from this 16, which is 4.5 feet, out to this 16, which is infinity, will be in focus. Now let's say you set it at f5.6. Well, then everything from infinity down to about 12 feet will be in focus. So your hyperfocal range is at f16, and it's really basically everything is in focus. But those guides also tell you some other things about focus. Let's say that you set your camera at f4, and you set your close focus at 5 feet, like this. That lets you know that everything from 5 feet to about 6.25 feet will be in focus at f4. So this guide tells you your hyperfocal range, but it also helps you set up your exact area of focus when you are selecting your aperture and determining where you want to set your focal point. And so that's it for the Ansco Memar. That is using it. I would demonstrate the self-timer on this, but the self-timer on these old leaf shutters are notoriously touchy and easy to break. And this one works sometimes, typically. Actually, let's try it. Let's give it a shot. So to use the self-timer on this camera, you just have to, there we go. To use the self-timer on the camera, to arm it, you just push it clockwise, and then you activate the shutter. And the self-timer will count down for about 10 seconds or so, and then it's going to take the picture. And that little click there at the end was it taking the picture. And that now is everything that there is to know about how to use the Ansco Memar. It's a very simple camera that you can pick up and learn to use in however long this video is going to be, about 15 minutes, and learn to use effectively. It's not the best camera out there, but it's lightweight and it fits in your pocket. It does really everything you need to do, and the images are definitely respectable coming out of it. A few things not to do with your camera. Don't touch the lenses and don't touch the shutter. Of course, if you're touching the shutter, you've taken things apart. Also, don't store your camera and lens in your car, because there are oils in the shutter mechanism that can get hot and seep into places they shouldn't, or get cold and break down into constituent components that can gum up the works. Also, don't store it in a plastic bag or box, because mold and mildew will grow on this lens, and it will grow in the viewfinder, and it will eat the leather, and it will damage your camera in some very bad and nasty ways. Actually, yesterday one of my buddies showed me an old Chicago cluster camera that had been in someone's basement underwater, and it was I couldn't even touch it. My allergies were so bad. So mold does affect cameras. Also, don't let this get wet, because it's not weather sealed and it is an old camera, and if water gets in there, it will wreak all kinds of havoc on the camera. And just remember that your camera is a precision tool, and as long as you take care of your camera, it will take care of you. So if this video was helpful, please leave me a thumbs up. That lets me know I'm on the right track and that I'm producing content which is helpful for you. If you have any questions or comments about the Ansco Memar or other photography things, please leave those below, and I'm pretty good about responding fairly quickly. If you have any suggestions or ideas for future videos, please let me know, and if I have the technical know-how and equipment, I'm more than happy to do that for you. If you would like to subscribe and find out when I do more videos about photography, digital or film photography, as well as cameras and other things, tips and tricks you can do to improve your photography, by all means, please do that. Thank you guys for watching. Hey everybody, and welcome to my this day's going great.